Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into a great presentation by Bill Gurley, the VC. It's called Running Down a Dream: How to Succeed and Thrive in a Career You Love.
Yeah, it's full of some really useful stuff.
Totally. So, our plan is basically to pull out the main ideas, the sort of core principles he shares for building a career that you actually, love. And we're working from the transcript of his talk from back in September 2018.
And what I think is really effective is how Gurley uses stories. It's not just like abstract advice. He grounds it in real people's journeys.
Makes it much more relatable, doesn't it?
Definitely. It sticks with you more.
Okay, so to kick things off, he uses three uh, quite different examples of success. First, there's Bobby Knight, the basketball
Like
coach.
Indiana University. Legend.
Exactly. But Gurley points out, he wasn't always the Bobby Knight. In college, he apparently barely played. He wasn't a starter.
Hmm.
And Gurley's point is his rise came from this like relentless networking and just soaking up knowledge from the best coaches out there.
It wasn't just about showing up on game day. It was the process behind it, the intentional learning, the relationship building. That's what Gurley highlights.
Yeah, the groundwork. Okay, then the second story is Robert Zimmerman.
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan, yeah. And the picture Gurley paints is someone just completely, utterly absorbed by folk music, like obsessed.
Right.
So he makes this big move to New York, which was, the heart of the folk scene then.
Driven purely by wanting to learn from his idols, basically.
Exactly. And that deep dive, that immersion, well, it led to everything. The huge career, the songwriting, even the Nobel Prize eventually.
It's a pretty powerful illustration of how intense personal interest, that real passion, can fuel this incredible dedication. Dylan wasn't just listening, he was studying it.
Dissecting it.
Yeah. And the insight there is, that kind of passion, when you actually act on it and study deeply, that can lead to something really revolutionary.
Okay, and the third story is Danny Meyer, the restaurant guy.
Union Square Cafe, Shake Shack.
Yeah.
Big name in hospitality.
So Meyer, apparently he had this like perfectly good sales career going, looked successful on paper,
Uh-huh.
but his real passion was food, restaurants. So he pivots, and Gurley really emphasizes Meyer's dedication to research, learning from the best, understanding the industry inside out.
That pivot is interesting because it shows it's okay to change course, even if you're already successful.
Right.
If you find that deeper passion and then you combine it with like rigorous learning about that new field, you can actually achieve something much more fulfilling.
So from these three kind of different paths, Knight, Dylan, Meyer, Gurley pulls out 5 main guidelines, 5 principles for chasing that dream job.
Okay.
Let's take the first one, find your passion.
Seems obvious, maybe. But Gurley really stresses the depth needed here. It can't be superficial. It has to be a deep personal interest.
Something that'll keep you going when things get tough.
Exactly.
He actually quotes his partner, Kevin Harvey, who said, life is a use it or lose it proposition. Yeah, basically saying, spend your time on what genuinely makes you happy, what excites you.
And it has to be your passion, right? Not what your parents want or what looks good on LinkedIn or just chasing the money.
Right. Gurley's clear on that. External stuff, status, pay, they can be nice outcomes, but they shouldn't be the driver.
The motivation has to come from inside.
He uses another Bobby Knight quote here, which I think really nails it. Everybody has the will to win. People don't have the will to prepare. Practice.
That's the
And Gurley's interpretation is if you're truly passionate, you'll actually enjoy the preparation, the practice, the hard yards, not just the winning bit.
The process itself becomes rewarding. That's kind of the litmus test, isn't it? If you enjoy the grind, you're probably onto something.
Yeah, exactly. It makes the whole thing sustainable,
Okay, so that leads nicely into the second guideline then.
which is hone your craft constantly. This is where the passion meets perspiration, I guess.
Gurley uses the term obsessive understanding, which is pretty intense.
It is.
He's saying it's not enough to just be interested. You have this like ongoing duty to learn everything you can, study the history, know the pioneers, understand how things got to where they are now.
Build that deep foundation.
Exactly. Don't just chase the latest fads.
Yeah.
Really understand the fundamentals.
He gives this example of an MBA student passionate about esports.
Right.
And Gurley says, look, your goal should be to walk out of that program knowing more about esports than anyone else in your class, become the go-to expert, even if it's a niche.
Own that space. And he also touches on location, which is interesting.
Yeah, the epicenter idea.
Right. Like if you're into country music, maybe being in Nashville helps.
Mhm.
Or tech in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Being physically where the action is can accelerate learning and networking.
Hmm.
It's not always possible, but
Something to consider.
definitely.
And to really hammer home this honing your craft point, Gurley revisits Bobby Knight. Remember that story about Knight's second meeting with Pete Newell?
Oh, yeah, the plays.
He shows up with 74 detailed, diagrammed plays.
74,
Yeah.
that's commitment. It really shows the level of deep work Gurley's talking about.
It really does. Then with Dylan, he brings up that Scorsese documentary,
No Direction Home. Great film.
where Dylan calls himself a musical expeditionary, and others just describe him as a sponge.
Just soaking it all in.
Yeah, his constant study of folk music, absorbing everything that was the bedrock for his own innovation later.
It kind of busts the myth of the genius who just creates out of nothing, doesn't it?
Totally.
Dylan built on what came before, because he knew what came before, inside out. It was informed creativity.
And then Danny Meyer again. His research sounds legendary. Gurley tells these stories about Meyer going super deep before launching his restaurants.
Like the barbecue thing?
Yeah, tasting like 14 different kinds of chopped pork in North Carolina,
Yeah.
or crisscrossing the country just studying burger joints and shake stands before Shake Shack.
Wow. That's not just like reading a few articles online. That's immersive.
It really is proper field work. It shows the lengths these guys went to really understand their domain.
And for anyone listening, the message is kind of, are you going that deep? Are you really putting in the effort to understand your field comprehensively?
Gurley even compares it to Picasso. Picasso mastered classical painting before he started breaking all the rules with Cubism.
Right. You need to know the rules to break them effectively.
His point is, yeah, greatness isn't random. It comes from that deep knowledge. And today, with the internet,
Information is everywhere.
exactly, there's almost no excuse not to become deeply knowledgeable about whatever it is you're passionate about.
Yeah, the resources are there. It's about initiative, really. Are you taking it?
Okay, so guideline number 3, develop mentors in your field, moving from self-study to learning from others.
And Gurley emphasizes being proactive here. Maybe even aggressive.
Like Dylan hitchhiking to meet Woody Guthrie.
Exactly. That's the kind of proactive energy he's talking about. Don't just wait for mentors to find you. Seek them out. Find people whose experience you admire.
But it's not just finding them, is it? It's how you manage that relationship.
No, absolutely not. Gurley says, treat them with respect, obviously, but also be prepared to debate, to really engage with their ideas. Apply what they tell you. Take notes. Share back what you learned.
Keep them interested in your progress.
Yeah, keep them invested. Show them their time isn't being wasted. He mentions, like, sending updates, showing how you use their advice, maybe a small gift when you hit a milestone they helped with. It's about nurturing the relationship.
And it's not just an early career thing either. Gurley says you should never stop looking for mentors. He talks about meeting Stan Druckenmiller and Howard Marks, like investment titans, much later in his own career. And Danny Meyer, too. Even when he was starting out, he was apparently very strategic about building relationships with the big names in the restaurant world.
It shows that learning is lifelong,
Yeah.
right? No matter how experienced you are, there's always someone you can learn from, always a different perspective.
Which actually leads into the 4th guideline, embrace peers in your field.
Right. It's not just about looking upwards to mentors. Your contemporaries, the people alongside you, are just as crucial.
Why does Gurley think they're so important?
Well, for discussion, arguments, batting ideas around, learning from each other's mistakes and successes, that's often where innovation sparks in those peer-to-peer interactions.
It's about building a community of mutual support and learning.
Exactly. And he makes a good point about networking. It's not just about collecting business cards or LinkedIn connections.
Quality over quantity.
Pretty much. It's about finding people where there's genuine overlap in interests, so you can actually help each other, share relevant stuff, learn together.
And he advocates for sharing best practices really openly.
Yeah, which can feel a bit scary sometimes, like you're giving away your secrets.
Right.
But Gurley argues that this open collaborative spirit actually lifts the whole field. Everyone gets better.
A rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing.
Yeah. And he also says, celebrate your peers' wins. Don't be jealous. Be supportive. It creates a much healthier ecosystem.
That makes sense. He also points out that peers don't have to be in your exact job or niche. He mentions Bobby Knight learning from a swimming coach.
Ah, interesting. Cross-pollination of ideas.
Yeah, or like going to conferences outside your immediate field to get broader perspectives.
That kind of diversity of thought can be really valuable. Spark new connections you wouldn't otherwise make.
So practically speaking, how does he suggest connecting with peers? He mentions LinkedIn.
Yeah, focusing on quality connections there. But he actually spends more time highlighting Twitter.
Really? Twit?
Yeah, he sees it as this incredible, like, real-time fire hose of expertise and networking. Lots of experts in various fields are really active there, sharing insights.
Mm.
And the direct message function, he says, can be super powerful for starting one-on-one conversations with people you might not otherwise reach.
Okay, so that's a practical tip for listeners. Get active on Twitter in your field, follow key people, engage in conversations.
It can be a really effective way to connect with both mentors and peers if you use it strategically.
Okay, brings us to the fifth and final guideline. Always give credit and pay it forward.
This one feels pretty fundamental, both ethically and professionally.
Gurley puts it bluntly. It's the right thing to do, and it stops you from becoming, well, his word, an asshole.
Huh. Yeah.
Huh.
Basically, acknowledge the people who helped you. Don't take credit for other people's work or ideas.
Seems simple, but important for building trust and long-term relationships. He shares a personal story, doesn't he, about his professor.
Yeah, Jim Frederickson, his favorite professor. Gurley apparently made a point of acknowledging him consistently throughout his career, just showing that ongoing gratitude.
Nice. And then the second part is pay it forward.
Right. Eventually, you reach a point where you can become the mentor. Share your knowledge, help those coming up behind you.
Complete the circle.
Exactly. He points to Bobby Knight's coaching tree. All the former players and assistants who became successful coaches themselves.
That's a great example.
And Danny Meyer, too, known for being incredibly gracious and fostering a really supportive culture.
So those are the 5 core principles from Gurley. Find passion, hone craft, get mentors, embrace peers, give credit.
Pretty solid advice.
Yeah. And then Gurley wraps up with a couple of more recent examples using MBAs as sort of pivot points.
Right, like Sam Hinkie.
Yeah, the trust the process guy from the Philadelphia 76ers. He apparently read Moneyball, got hooked on sports analytics.
Coming from finance, right.
Yeah, and used his MBA to pivot. Worked for the Rockets, then became GM for the Sixers. It shows how you can use further education to make a significant career shift based on a newfound passion.
Combining that passion with actually getting the skills and network needed for the new field.
And the other example.
Katrina Lake, founder of Stitch Fix.
Ah,
She saw issues in retail, used her Harvard MBA to launch Stitch Fix,
yeah.
and Gurley highlights her networking, connecting with people from fashion, like Gap, but also tech, like Netflix.
Bringing different worlds together.
Exactly. Using mentorship and connections strategically to build this really successful, disruptive company.
So 2 more stories illustrating those core principles in action.
Yeah. Passion, learning, networking, mentorship. It's all there.
Okay, so pulling it all together, Gurley's core message seems pretty clear. It's about finding that thing you love,
That deep passion.
committing to being a lifelong learner, really mastering your field,
Constantly honing the craft.
building strong relationships, both up with mentors and sideways with peers.
Yeah, embracing those connections.
And finally, just being a good human, giving credit where it's due and helping others along the way.
It sounds straightforward, maybe, but actually doing all that consistently takes real effort and dedication. It's a roadmap, though.
Definitely a roadmap. So as we wrap up this deep dive, Gurley ends his talk referencing Tom Petty and similar advice about passion and growth. It does make you think.
So, for everyone listening, maybe the question is, which of these 5 principles really jumps out at you right now? Where are you on your own path?
Yeah, like what's one small, concrete thing you could do today, maybe based on this? Could you dive deeper into some research for your field? Could you maybe identify one person you admire and reach out, even just tentatively?
Or maybe just engage with a peer on Twitter, share an interesting article, start a conversation.
Exactly. We've kind of laid out the framework from Gurley's talk here, but the next step, the actual, running down your own dream, well, that starts with you.